Hello and welcome to the local campaign. I'm Roger Peterson from City News. On October 19th, Canada will elect the 42nd Parliament. And Rogers TV is the only station producing debates of all of Toronto's 25 ridings. For the next hour, you'll hear from the candidates of Toronto Centre. 2015, of course, marks the beginning of electoral riding redistribution, so boundaries in the majority of the ridings have changed, along with some riding names. So before I introduce the candidates, let's take a closer look at the newly redrawn riding of Toronto Centre.
The riding of Toronto Centre is bordered to the north by Charles Street, a small portion of Bloor Street East, and Rosedale Valley Road, and to the south by a small section of Front Street, the Esplanade, and Mill Street. Its eastern border is the Don River, and the western border zigzags between Yonge and Bay Streets. Neighborhoods in this riding include St. Jamestown, Cabbagetown, Regent Park, and the Church Wellesley Village. Recognizable landmarks include the St. Lawrence Market, Ryerson University, and Yonge Dundas Square. The incumbent MP is Liberal Party member Chrystia Freeland. During this election, she will be running in the new federal riding of University Rosedale.
Introduce you now to our candidates who have joined us for this. Julian de Battista is the Conservative. Linda McQuaig is with the NDP. Bill Morneau is with the Liberals. Colin Biggin from the Green Party. Philip Fernandez from the Marxist-Leninist Party. Mariam Ahmad from the Communist Party of Canada. And also not here right now, but trying to join us is Jordan Stone, an independent, and the Libertarian Tom Armstrong will not be joining us. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. I will give you now a minute to do your opening statements, and it will be done in order of the most seats by party in the House of Commons, and we will begin with Julian de Battista, the Conservative. Julian.
Hello. I would like to begin by thanking Rogers Cable for producing these debates and bringing the candidates' voices to the voters of Toronto Centre. My name is Julian de Battista, and I'm the Conservative candidate for the riding of Toronto Centre. I'm here because I want to represent you as your Member of Parliament. I live in Toronto Centre. I work in Toronto Centre. I experience the same everyday struggles as the people of Toronto Centre. I'm here because I want to make our lives better. I want to make a difference, and I know I can make a difference. But I can't do it without your help. Listen to what I have to say and trust me with your vote. Together, we can make a difference and make things better for the people of Toronto Centre. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julian. Linda McQuaig of the NDP. Linda.
Thanks, Roger. My name is Linda McQuaig. I've been a journalist and author all my career, and my focus has been on income inequality. My most recent book is The Trouble with Billionaires, in which I show how all the income gains in recent years have gone to the top. But I argue that it doesn't have to be this way, that the reason for this rising inequality has been the economic policies put in place by Liberal and Conservative governments. And that's why I'm delighted to run for the NDP, because we're going to do things differently. We're going to champion ordinary people. We're going to raise taxes on the big corporations and close loopholes that benefit the richest CEOs, and we're going to take those savings and we're going to invest in programs and infrastructure that benefit all Canadians. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Linda. Bill Morneau of the Liberals. Bill.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here to talk about how Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party will usher in a new era of Canadian growth while creating a fairer Canada. I've built a Canadian business with almost 4,000 employees and volunteered in Toronto Centre for 25 years as the chair of Covenant House and the chair of St. Michael's Hospital. We'll make historic investments in infrastructure to create jobs, to grow our economy, and to make your life better through better transit and more affordable housing. We'll make Canada fairer by reducing middle-class tax rates. We'll bring 315,000 Canadian children out of poverty by increasing the Canadian child benefit to benefit those poorest Canadians while stopping sending checks to the wealthiest. Choosing Justin Trudeau and the Liberals, and me, Bill Morneau, represents real change to a more prosperous and a fairer Canada, a better Canada for you and your family.
Thank you very much, Bill. Colin Biggin of the Green Party. Colin.
Thanks, Roger. It's a pleasure to be here, and it's a great pleasure and an honor to represent the Green Party in Toronto Centre riding. It's been my home for 6 years. I live down by the Humane Society. I also started my first business in Toronto Centre back in 1996. I'm in the high-tech sector. I'm an iPhone programmer, and I've been doing this ever since the iPhone came out. I'm really happy that people are starting to think about the Green Party as a party that they want to vote for. For ages, we've really represented, I think, the conscience of Canadians, and in the long-term future, many of our policies are going to be the policies that other parties are going to adopt. Of course, we're known for the environment, but one of the policies we have coming out, of course, is our elimination of tuition for students. This is one of the most important things that we've said in a long time, and I'm very proud to be representing the Green Party and putting that platform forward.
Okay, Colin, thank you very much. Philip Fernandez of the Marxist-Leninist Party.
Hello. In this election, I'm calling for the citizens of Toronto Centre to vote for democratic renewal by first of all defeating the Harper dictatorship and the Liberals in the riding. The majority of citizens in Toronto Centre are of the working class. They create all the wealth in society. They make Toronto run, and yet they have no voice when it comes to decisions that affect their lives. That is because of a corrupt and dysfunctional electoral system that is rigged in favor of the rich and their political parties. The working people of Toronto have to take charge of the economy and move it in a new direction that serves their interests and the interests of Canada, and instead of the monopolies. There needs to be democratic renewal so that government is actually in the hands of the working people and can serve their interests. There needs to be a modern constitution and an anti-war government. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Philip. And Mariam Ahmad from the Communist Party of Canada. Mariam.
Hello, thank you for tuning in. My name is Mariam Ahmad, and I am the Communist Party of Canada's candidate. There's a lot of stake in this election. After almost a decade of the Harper's Conservative, Canada has changed, but not for the better. The wealthiest in Canada have increasingly gotten wealthier, while the rest of the country has faced years of austerity, which has ended in unemployment or precarious jobs. Canadians need fundamental change, and we won't find a real alternative in either Trudeau's Liberal or Tom Mulcair's NDP. Only the Communist Party of Canada represents the working class. We call for raising the minimum wage and living standards, expanding social services and programs, actions on climate change, and curbing the corporate power.
All right, thank you very much, Mariam. And we will now move on. We have one more candidate joining us, Jordan Stone. He's running a little late. We will try and get him in and get his opening statement in. But we're going to start with our question period right now. And our first question, we will start off with you, Julian. And it's Toronto Centre encompasses some of the wealthiest and some of the poorest residents in the city. Is there a role for government in narrowing income disparity? And Julian, you have 30 seconds to answer.
So the Conservative Party, under the leadership of Stephen Harper, has made great strides in making sure that Canada's working families are supported. We've increased the universal child care benefit to its highest levels. We've increased the benefits provided to seniors, increasing the GIS with the biggest increase in recent memory. Throughout all these increases, there is more money in the pockets of working Canadians, and this helps the families in Toronto Centre get by.
Okay, thank you very much, Julian. Linda?
Yes, there's absolutely a role for government in addressing the issue of income inequality. And there's very specific ways we can do this. By investing, for instance, in affordable housing. The NDP is going to put $2.7 billion into affordable housing. We will greatly increase the opportunity for people in the riding to be properly housed. We want to invest in affordable child care so that women can go out to work. We also want to create a new
Linda,
federal minimum wage of $15 an hour.
We're going to try and keep the opening statements on the questions to 30 seconds. Bill.
Well, thank you. It's an important question. I've been out knocking on doors in Toronto Centre, and we've seen that, yes, it's true. There is a significant variation in terms of people's success and their ability to get by. We've decided in the Liberal Party that we'll address this head on. We've decided to reduce taxes for those in the middle class and to raise taxes for those in the top 1%. We believe this will have an important impact on helping those that are struggling to get ahead to do better, and that's an important role for government.
Okay, thank you very much, Bill. Colin.
Yes, there absolutely is a role. One thing that the Green Party would do, of course, is go after money that's been sheltered in tax havens. This would address the inequality with the rich. But for the poor and the unfortunate, we would implement a guaranteed livable income, which would then kind of equalize everybody's income in not only the riding but in the country. And this would balance out all the various programs that are offered by the federal government and the provincial governments.
Okay, thank you very much, Colin. Philip.
People are born into society, and the state has a responsibility to make sure that everybody lives a dignified life and a prosperous life. The problem that we have is that these big political parties that are in power, Liberals and most recently the Conservatives, go to bat for the rich and the neoliberal agenda. This has to be stopped. Investments must be put into social programs. The economy must be revitalized. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, Philip, thank you. Mariam.
I think the government has a very important role. For me, there's two really important things that we have to do. One is raising the wage. We want to raise the minimum wage to $20. That will help a lot of folks that are in poverty get out. The second thing I would say is housing, affordable housing. So the Communist Party of Canada wants to invest in 1 million units of affordable housing over the next 4 years. Also eliminate taxes on income under $35,000 and double corporate taxes.
Okay, Mariam, thank you very much. And Jordan Stone joins us now for the riding of Toronto Centre, also my home riding, and you're running as an independent. We missed out on your opening statement, but do join us in this conversation. The question was, Toronto Centre encompasses some of the wealthiest and some of the poorest residents in the city. Is there a role for government in narrowing income disparity? And we're limiting the opening answers to 30 seconds.
Of course, there's a role for government. The main issue is economic equality. On my platform, it's very easy to fix. You just have to have the will to fix it. You raise the minimum wage and you lower the taxes on small businesses. So money they would lose on paying people more, they would get back with lower taxes. I see this firsthand. I know people personally who are working 2 and 3 jobs just to pay their rent. There's one more idea I have, sorry, briefly.
We're going to have to hold your thought on that now,
okay.
And we'll give people a chance to rebut, or if anybody wants to challenge anybody. And
well, sure. I'd like to start by just focusing on the real challenge with income inequality as we're starting out is the fact that people don't have jobs. So we're dealing with a situation where we have a continuing high level of unemployment, especially among youth. We see with a 13% rate of unemployment. So one of the most critical things that we can do is deal with how we grow the economy. And what we've decided in the Liberal Party is we want to make significant investments in growth, significant infrastructure investments that would fundamentally change our growth rate. We'd like to make a $60 billion investment, which will make an enormous difference, allow us to invest in things that matter to people like transit, housing, that will really make a difference in their lives, and especially for those that are most challenged. Getting more housing is going to be critically important. Being able to get around the city more rapidly is going to be critically important. And that's the starting point for making a real difference in so many people's lives.
Yeah, I mean, the NDP is absolutely committed to serious investments in infrastructure. We're going to invest $12.9 billion in transit. We're going to invest $2.7 billion in housing. We're going to create a national childcare program at a cost of no more than $15 a day. And importantly, we're going to bring in a new federal minimum wage. There hasn't been a federal minimum wage since the Liberals killed it in the late 90s. It's very important to have a federal minimum wage to set a standard at the federal level that puts pressure on the provinces to raise their minimum wages, and also sends a message that the federal government thinks wages are too low and they should be raised.
So we've heard that the Liberals are going to increase spending and run deficits. And the NDP is going to raise corporate taxes and spend on infrastructure. The Conservative Party has invested record amounts in infrastructure over the past 9 years. We won't run deficits. We will make sure that we're not putting debt on the backs of future generations, and all of our spending is done responsibly while continuing to invest record amounts.
So I think.
Sorry, Bill, I'm just going to, Philip, did you want to,
Yes,
to
I
join
do.
in?
What we're hearing here is a lot of mumbo jumbo from political parties that have already been in power in most cases, liberals and the conservatives. What's interesting is that it's not possible to address the issue of income inequality, or the issue of poverty without the citizens actually controlling the economy. Governments in recent years, with the Liberals and certainly with the Harper government, have worked hard to give money to the private sector at the expense of the public. They have ruined the economy. Like there's a situation right now in Hamilton where they're going to shut down U.S. Steel and former Stelco. About 800 workers are affected and about 2,000 pensioners. What is the government doing to intervene there? The Liberal government in Ontario is doing nothing, and the Conservatives are sitting on their hands.
Okay, we'll go to Bill and then Colin. Go ahead, Bill.
So, yeah, I'd just like to come back to your question, because your question was really around income inequality. And I think that what you're asking is, are we able to do something to deal with this? And critically in that question is whether we're going to do something now. So our conclusion is that Canadians need change now. Our reason for investing significantly and being willing to go into deficit for the next 3 years is we recognize that now is a time to invest. We have low interest rates, which makes it easier to do so. We also have a real commitment to making those changes in such a way that we can actually get the money into the economy immediately. So that will help us to create jobs. It will help us to do things that will be quite different than what either the Conservatives or the NDP can do, because in both cases they've said that they're going to focus on balancing the budget.
No.
Okay.
And so by doing that, what
we're-
we'll be doing is we'll be waiting
The
for years.
difference, Bill, is that we're going to make the investments that you're talking about. We're making similarly large investments, but we're going to pay for them with higher corporate taxes. That's the key difference.
Okay, I'm going to stop you two there and let Colin join in on this.
Yeah, I mean, to address the income inequality, I mean, one thing that's been going on in the past 10 years under the Conservatives, of course, is these boutique tax credits that they've been given to select members of, or select families or select areas, and it's purely been vote buying. And it's been effective. Great politics, lousy governance. We're going to eliminate all those, and we're going to bring some of that money back into the federal coffers. That should address some of the income inequality that's been going on the upper end of the pay scale. On lower end, once again, we're going to be bringing in our guaranteed livable income, and we really want to invest in social housing. We want to invest in food programs. We really want to bring everybody up.
Oh,
That's it.
okay, Colin, thank you. And Mariam.
As a young person who's worked more than 3 jobs to sustain myself, I do want to bring the attention of all the other parties. I think Linda's the only one that mentioned raising the minimum wage. However, Linda, you didn't really go into detail about what that wage looks like. I am familiar. It's $15 for federally regulated jobs, which are less than, 1% of
This is a federal election. We can only affect the federal minimum wage, but it sets an important standard that does bring pressure on the provinces.
Well,
We actually have
as
the
I
same
was
policy.
all I'm trying to say is that most federally regulated jobs are already getting paid $15 an hour.
There's
Also,
100,000 that aren't.
May I finish?
Yes,
Thank you so much. My point is just that if you're living in Toronto, especially when we're talking about Toronto Centre, the surveys that they've done, you have to have $18.52 to survive. To live a wage where you're working one job and you can support yourself, you can put food on the table. With $11 an hour, you really can't do that. We're the only party that calls for $20 an hour, because $18.52 is still a rounded number.
Okay.
And as much as investment goes and corporate taxes, again, I would like to know the specific details, because it all sounds great, but I've heard it a million times and over and over and over in elections.
All right, Jordan.
This is a huge, huge problem. As I was starting to say before, I know people personally at this coffee shop, an independent coffee shop where I go. They're working 2 and 3 jobs. Yesterday I was actually in the coffee shop and the girl was crying, in front of me, because she can't afford to live properly. Actually, the Toronto Star did a great article. It takes 37 $100,000 a year to just get by in Toronto. And
Maybe the
Toronto
same
Centre would be
argument
part
as
of that.
Mariam.
One easy solution. All the parties have good ideas. They all approach it a little bit differently, but I got a very quick and easy solution. We're the only country without a national in the developed world without a national housing strategy. All we have to do is give developers tax incentives to build more apartments. Then the rents go down. That is where most of the money is going for people's income, and it's bringing their quality of life right down to the bottom.
Well, I think on that note, we'll move on to our second question then, which is about housing. And according to the Bank of Canada, mortgages make up 68% of Canada's record high household debt. Home prices in Toronto continue to climb, and more people are borrowing to buy expensive homes. If this housing bubble bursts, what role can the government play to prevent this from having severe consequences for the economy and the people involved? And Linda, we'll start with you.
Well, actually, in Toronto Centre, it's more an issue of renting than home ownership that's the problem. In fact, 22% of the renters in downtown Toronto are paying more than 50% of their income in rent, a situation that's completely unaffordable.
So we're asking about this, about the mortgages and protecting that if inflation rates rise or if the bank rates rise. If we can just focus on that, we can come back to that though, about the renters in this riding as well.
Okay, about how we can prevent...
What role should government play to prevent any kind of rate rises from having severe consequences on the economy? People losing houses, the economy dipping, even crashing?
Well, the government should be playing a role in that, in preventing the expansion of mortgages to too large an amount, so that, allowing the market to get overheated. There's ways that they can do that, and that is important that they do that. As I say, though, I want to come back to the rental issue, because that's...
Well, we will come back to it, but we're in the answering just that question right now. Bill.
Well, I think your question is really what can the government do in order to help people who are facing really significant challenges meeting the mortgage and worrying about interest rate rises. This is a very legitimate concern for many, many Canadians. It is, as Linda said, it's not the most significant concern in Toronto Centre, but there are definitely people who are in that situation. First and foremost, we need to worry about having a robust economy. So we're in a low growth environment right now. In a low growth environment, obviously, we need to make some investments. And we've specifically said that we will make the most significant investments that have been made in the history of Canada in infrastructure. That's critically important. It'll help the economy to do well.
Bill, we're going to have to cut you off there. We're just on the 30-second answering of the questions here. Colin.
Mortgage rates are certainly a concern to me since I have one. If the mortgage rate were to go up suddenly, it would definitely affect me and my ability to live the lifestyle that I do. I don't have a car or anything. The government certainly has a role. They can't let interest rates rise too high. But if they were to do that, then the governments certainly should apply pressure to the banks to not start foreclosing on people willy-nilly like they might want to do.
Okay, Colin. Philip.
Well, housing is a right. And so, yes, government has a big role to play to make sure that that right is guaranteed. I think that we need to get away from the fact that governments are beholden to the speculators, the financiers, and that's the problem. We need to have the kind of government, or we need to organize for a kind of government that's going to put an end to this.
Okay, Mariam.
I have to agree with Linda on this. I think my main concern is for people who are renting. But as far as mortgages go, I think we should ban evictions and mortgage foreclosures and utility cutoffs to people who are unemployed or who can't afford to pay their mortgage. Also support demands for rent controls, as again, like the inflation rates are going higher and the minimum wage is not. Like, we need to find a way to let people live, and like housing is a right.
Okay, thank you very much, Mariam. Jordan.
And I would also agree about the rent issue. I mean, if you do lose your house, and God forbid you do, if you can't afford the rent, what are you going to do? Again, if you give incentives to developers to actually build apartment buildings, the rents will go down. That's the only immediate solution I can think of.
Okay, and Julian.
So this issue is one that matters to me, as I have recently purchased my first home, a condo in downtown Toronto. Our government has come out strong with measures to help first-time home buyers purchase their first home. We've pledged an increase to the home buyers plan, upping it from $25,000 to $35,000. The Prime Minister has also pledged to study the issue of foreign investors and the effect that they're having on the housing market in Toronto.
Okay, thank you very much, Julian. Colin, you'd like to...
Well, I was just going to say, but that addresses people who are buying a condo for the first time, and I took advantage of the home buyers plan, which I believe was introduced many, many years ago before the Conservatives. It doesn't address actually what would happen if the rates were to suddenly rise.
Okay. And Linda?
Well, I don't think we're in danger of the rates suddenly rising. They're at historic lows, in fact.
So they can only go up.
But there's no suggestion they're about to spring up. The bigger danger is house prices keep rising, and that is partly driving the increase in rents as well. And can I come back to rents? Because
I think we can come. Well, we can do that actually as the next question if everybody's okay with that. But we'll just finish with this part, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about the riding specifically. It sounds like everybody here would like to do that. Bill, and then Mariam.
So I started off earlier talking about the need for a robust economy, which is the single best insurance against problems in housing. The second issue really that I'd like to come to is unemployment. So when you think about the things that actually move people out of their homes, rising rates does potentially have a challenging situation for many people, but the most important issue for most people is actually having a job and being able to maintain that job. So the fact is that we need to start by thinking about employment, and that's why we come back to thinking about investment. So employment right now, we have youth unemployment that continues to be at a high rate. We have to worry about a volatile economy, and so the way to deal with that is for government to take a fiscal role that makes sense, which is, in our situation, we've come to the conclusion that now is the right time to make significant investments. That will help people to have a good job, which will help them to stay in their home. Okay. And we do believe that interest rates, while important, are something that are best left to deal with through the Bank of Canada.
Okay, well, Mariam, you want
I was actually just waiting for the next question.
Okay, so we'll move on then, shall we, if that's okay? We'll talk about this in the riding itself. It sounds like rentals and people who rent is an important issue for many of you. How do we help those people, or how do we keep it manageable to live in the city at the federal level? Is it something that can be handled at the federal level, or do we have to look at it as a provincial or a municipal thing? And we're going to start, I believe, with Bill, you're first.
Okay. Well, this is a critically important issue, as you say. In Toronto Centre, we have a significant number of people who are struggling because they're either underhoused or in a situation where the housing opportunities are just too expensive for them. We find that there are not enough units, and that many of the housing units that are there are not kept up to the standard that needs to be kept up to. And that's a challenge because the municipalities and the provincial government may not have enough money to actually help out. We've decided that that is a role for the federal government, that we would like to, as part of our infrastructure plan, significantly increase our expenditure on new build as well as seniors facilities. We'd like to be willing to put money towards refurbishing existing stock, and we'd like to renew the co-op agreements in downtown Toronto.
Okay.
All of these things will have important impacts on housing in downtown Toronto.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Colin.
Very much like the Liberals, the Green Party definitely wants to invest in not only new housing, but also wants to improve the existing housing that's out there. And absolutely we want to extend the financing for the co-ops, which I believe is coming to an end very soon.
Okay, and Phil.
Well, the federal government has responsibility for housing. I think that it is very rich to hear the Liberals talking about how they want to create a robust economy when under Paul Martin, $27 million was removed from the budgets for housing and social programs and put into general revenues. The other thing is the fact that housing should be built through state funds. The idea of using P3 systems, like in the case of Daniels Corporation downtown, which revitalized the Regent Park area, that's not the way to go, because there are still some people who have been displaced from there, who haven't come back.
We'll stop you there and we'll come back, but just for our opening comments, Mariam.
I think everything is interconnected, right? Like, you can't talk about housing without talking about jobs as well. But I think housing is, like, as a citizen of Canada, it is your right, but also for newcomers and immigrants and refugees. But I'm just going to focus on Toronto Centre for now. The 10 seconds, oh my God. Okay, so the main reason that I kept talking about rental was because I think most people in Toronto Centre are renting, they're not buying. People who are buying things aren't really the main concern of our party right now. It's for the most precarious workers, the people that nobody really fights for, nobody cares about. Everybody keeps talking about the middle class, but what about the low?
I'll have to stop you there, Mariam.
Sorry.
Just on this open one. Jordan.
Well, they're actually all great ideas, but where I come from is if you're not living in a low income, if you're not living in under $50,000 a year, a lot of people will say anything. When you're living it and you actually have some ideas and really want to make things better, you have a vested interest to make things better. And I think that's the difference between me and a lot of the other candidates.
Okay, Jordan, thank you very much. Julian.
So our government is committed to ensuring that the housing needs of all Canadians are met. We're pledging to spend more than $3.2 billion each year over the next 4 years to help ensure that Canadians in need have access to affordable, secure, and suitable housing. That's over $2.3 billion for housing. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Julian. Linda.
There is definitely an important role for the federal government in housing. It's the abdication of the government from that role going back to 1996 under the Liberals. That's the problem. We used to have a strong national housing program. Tremendous housing was built in Toronto Centre. The NDP will restore that with $2.7 billion in new funding, and that will bring us back to the 1996 levels that allowed for some serious creation of co-op housing and nonprofit housing very effectively in the riding.
Okay, thank you very much, Linda. Would anybody?
So we seem to agree. There's a challenge about housing in Toronto Centre. So at least we can start with one conclusion. From there, we need to move to what are the different parties proposing and how are we actually going to deal with this issue in a way that's going to make a difference. So I think Canadians are going to understand that when one party looks at Canadians and says, we're going to tell you the truth about our finances are such that in order to make the significant investments that are going to make a difference in people's lives, we have to be willing to go into a short-term deficit. By good fortune, we're in time of low interest rates. Going into deficit in order to fund things like affordable housing makes sense at a time when you can afford to do it because of low interest rates. That's our proposal. All the other parties can say that they're making an investment, but the investment is not nearly as significant because they're not willing to take that fundamentally important step at this time in the economic cycle.
Jordan.
Well, that all sounds great, but things are getting harder for people. Rents keep going up. People are spending most of their money on their rents. And we hear this year after year after year. But when you're living in Toronto Centre and you're talking to people every day, things are not getting better. I think the easiest way to deal with the housing issue is to give incentives to builders to build apartments so rents can go down. Of course, we all understand, and I think we all agree, we have to have more affordable housing. And I think we agree, we need a national housing strategy. And why is this the only country in the developed world that doesn't have one? You know, people who are living on the streets are people. I saw Linda actually at the homeless memorial behind the Eaton Centre Church. I was surprised to see her, and I didn't know much about her. I didn't know much about her. When I saw her there, speaking with, eating with these people who have lost everything, that means something. That means that this person has a heart for these people, so they're going to do something for these people. And I think that it's a disgrace to walk down Yonge Street, to walk down Dundas Street, to walk over people who are laying there half dead because they can't afford a place to live. And they don't want to live in Satan House, or they don't want to live in some other debilitated government building, which is horrible.
We'll move over to Philip.
I think we have talked about a need for a change in the direction of the economy. At the moment, billions of dollars are exported from Canada through speculation, through the monopolies invested in other countries. The government borrows money, and in Ontario, for example, which has a budget of about $110 billion, $10 billion every year goes to servicing the interest on the debt. That is taken from monies that could be used for housing. So restricting monopoly right and to have governments that actually defend the rights of people and their interests, which also includes building housing publicly, not through incentives to privateers, but it's cheaper to build public housing by the state. That should be done.
Okay. Mariam.
Wow, housing is so important to me. As someone who always has to decide like how to manage, and there's always this, I think what you keep saying is a really important issue, is that not everyone on this table, and I'm not speaking for everyone of course, but can understand what it means to live in this there's no stability, there's no security, there's nothing that, you know, you're 100%, you're going to have this job 3 months along. It doesn't matter if you're doing everything right and you're working as hard as you can. So for me, what's really important is taking an emergency action. Like, there is a crisis in Toronto Centre. The amount of homeless people I walk by is too many at some point. And we want to build over 1 million units of affordable social housing over the next 3 years. And I have no doubt in my mind that this government has the money. When we're spending around $25 billion on military and fighter jets, I think we can do that much for our own citizens and build housing.
Okay.
I agree with what you're saying too, but when the government does work with the private sector, it can get done faster. So all I'm saying is to give them an incentive to actually get it done. The places will go up just as fast as that condo across the street went up.
All right, Colin, we'll give you last word on this, and then we're going to move on to our next question.
Yeah. They've been saying that new housing isn't really an issue in Toronto Centre. It actually is. There's a lot of condos being built. Anybody who walks around Toronto Centre knows this. Condos are cropping up at almost every major intersection now. Right within a 1-minute walk of me, we have a whole new development. So new housing is definitely an issue. Eventually, these places are going to go up for rent, and they are going to be offered at whatever the going rate is. So building new housing is an issue. The mortgage rates that are there, the rental rates are there. It's all tied. I can perfectly relate. When I first came to Toronto out of university, I was working co-op, and it was impossible to find a place to rent here. The situation is bad, and the government does have to get involved in some way to improve it.
Okay.
Can I just make a point about that?
Well, I have to let, I just said we're going to stop at Colin on this one, and we're going to move on. We want to get some more questions in before the end of the hour too. So I apologize to both of you, but we should move on. We want to talk about the TTC next. Again, something that is near and dear in this riding. TTC is facing yet another budget shortfall. It remains the lowest subsidized public system in North America. Gridlock is costing billions to the city's economy. Many critics say the answer is a well-funded and comprehensive transit strategy for the GTA and beyond. What role should the federal government play in fixing Toronto's transit woes? And Colin, we're starting with you.
The federal government has a huge role to play. Ostensibly, it falls under the provincial jurisdiction and maybe even municipal, but no, I'm sorry, the federal government has to. Transit is expensive. It's expensive in Toronto, it's expensive in New York, it's expensive in Tokyo. It's not billions of dollars expensive, it's tens of billions of dollars expensive. The federal government is the only government in this country that has that kind of clout to get that kind of financing. It has no choice. It's got to get involved in all the cities in this country.
Okay, Colin, thank you. Philip.
It's always the question of lack of money. The governments always say lack of money. But if we had an independent, sovereign economy based on manufacturing, we would have the means to deal with the infrastructure issues. It's as simple as that. And so rather than P3s, for example, building infrastructure in Toronto, because we do not know where the money is going, amounts of money are bandied about. We do not know where the money came from, who's beholden to it, where was it borrowed from. We don't know anything. And so, yes, we do need infrastructure, but we need it in a manner that is accountable to the people and does not run deficits and so on.
Thank you, Philip. Mariam.
Transit is really important. I work at York University, and in order to get there, it takes me an hour and a half. And I know that they've been building a transit system for the past 30 years, and they've been planning it and building it, which is, year after year, you see the sign change from 2012 to 2014. The Communist Party of Canada calls for free transit. That's easily done by nationalizing bank and nationalizing corporations and the industry, and it's possible.
Okay, Mariam. Jordan.
Clearly, The government needs to be involved in public transit. And what I would like to see is these people riding the transit. You know, when you're actually riding transit, you're seeing how difficult and congested and slow, and it gets more and more expensive. Then they can say, okay, wow, this is serious. When you actually experience something, you can speak to it. When you're poor, you can speak to it. When you have mental health issues, you can speak to that. All of these things, I think, the politicians who get elected become very separated from the people who elect them. Bring them back into the community. Bring them back into the TTC.
Okay. Jordan, I'm going to cut you off there. Thank you. And Julian.
I'm proud to say that I take the TTC to work every single day. And our Conservative government has made significant investments in infrastructure while keeping taxes low and balancing the budget. We've committed to funding subway extensions, new subway cars, and just recently to contributing 1/3 of Mayor Tory's Smart Track program. We have a plan, we're implementing the plan, and we are making record investments in transit infrastructure.
Okay, thank you, Julian. Linda.
Public transit's incredibly important. The NDP has pledged to invest $12.9 billion over 20 years in order to create sustainable long-term funding so cities can actually make serious plans. The Liberals keep talking about how big their infrastructure investment is, transit, housing, etc. But, you know, we've seen this kind of thing before. They often talk very progressively before an election. Then after the election, the business wing of the party takes over and kind of shuts things down. That's exactly what we don't need with transit and other and important investments like housing.
Okay, thank you, Linda. Bill.
Well, we do continue to talk about a significant infrastructure plan because that's in fact exactly what's needed in this case. We have challenges not only in Toronto but across the country with transit. It's a very real issue for Canadians. It's one in which we realize we need to work together with municipalities and with provincial governments in order to actually make a difference. So we've committed $20 billion over the next decade to transit. It's a critically important investment. It's one that's long-term and stable. It'll make a really important difference for the listeners on this show.
Okay, thanks very much, Bill. Would anybody like to rebut at this point?
Yeah.
Colin?
I just have a quick question for Julian, actually. You said that we're investing a lot, and it's been, I don't know what the word you said, like it's the most anyone's ever invested. Why is it then like that the daily fare keeps rising every so often?
Well, that's, I get, well, sorry, I'll let...
I can answer that.
Sure.
The general operation of the TTC is a responsibility of the Toronto Transit Commission and the City of Toronto. They're the ones who set the fare. We contribute to infrastructure payments, we contribute to new services, we contribute to expansion, but their overall management is the responsibility of the TTC.
Linda.
Yeah, I want to come back to the Liberals keeping promising investments, which they want to pay for with deficits. What they don't tell us, though, is something that came out actually last Saturday when they did their fully costed plan, and that is that part of their plan involves $6.5 billion worth of cuts in order to finally balance the budget at the end of their term. And they were very unspecific. In fact, they said, John McCallum said that everything was potentially on the table, but he wouldn't be specific where the actual cuts would come. That suggests austerity. That suggests cuts to healthcare, all kinds of things that we just don't know about.
Okay. Bill, and I know, Colin, you're next, but...
Sure. Well, I'd like to respond to that. First of all, the math's wrong. We've said that we see that we'll need to make about $3 billion of efficiencies over the time period, so that's what we've actually said. And we recognize that there are significant ways we could do that. For example, the Conservatives have spent $750 million on advertising. It's a good example. We'll be able to find those sorts of cost savings. But what's really important for people to understand here is we're seeing from the NDP a shift into desperation mode. They're taking a page out of Harper's books. By criticizing someone else, it's a way to deflect from the challenges of their own program. You know, we're starting to see national attack ads. So it's very familiar. The two parties over here, the Conservatives and the NDP, they're taking an approach that's not conducive to positive discussion of change. That's what we're actually doing.
No, we simply want to get the numbers.
I have to let Colin speak, and then...
I'll certainly let them continue on, but I just want to say that transit is something near and dear to my heart. I took transit to get up here. I live and die by the streetcar lines, and anybody who lives in Toronto Centre knows what a frustrating experience that can be. But I also know that transit is something that we really have to address on a national level. I'm originally from Montreal. I know the system there. A lot of my family lives out in Calgary right now, and right now they've got a huge transit infrastructure problem. This is something that has to be addressed by the federal government. It's got to be nationwide. We really do need a national strategy for this.
All right, Philip.
I think one of the issues that arises constantly is the tension between federal, provincial, and municipal. And this requires, I think, democratic renewal. We need to have modern constitutional arrangements to deal with this. That's point number one. Point number two is that the workers create all the wealth, as I said, in society. And it is the workers that keep the TTC going. The point is that the monies, the value that they create should remain in Canada. Should remain in Canada and be invested in developing the resources. Resources should remain in Canada, should be processed in Canada, and there should be trade for mutual benefit with other nations and peoples. If those things were done, the issue of infrastructure, the issue of transportation, the TTC, which we all need, which is needed, and needed to be publicly funded, will be taken care of. These are fundamental things.
Okay. I think we're ready to move on then to our next question, talking about funding. The national debt is $612 billion. That's just the federal government. The interest alone is 11% of the total federal revenue. With interest rates at historic lows, this cost can only go up when the rates rise. Should paying down the debt be more of a priority for the government, or should they run a deficit in order to stimulate the economy? And Colin, we are starting with you.
I must admit that I do believe that paying down the debt is a priority. Certainly it hasn't been a priority for the Conservatives, because all they've done is increase the debt over the last 10 years. They've run one surplus, and that was in the very first year, which they inherited from the Liberals. Under the Green Party plan, we've got a fully costed plan, and we will be reducing that deficit. And we will be, of course, introducing things like a carbon tax and dividend, which will not only tax carbon, but it will also give a dividend to every Canadian.
Okay, thank you very much, Colin. Philip.
I think that the electorate, whether in Toronto Centre or across the country, this is always a point of blackmail. Deficits, debt, do we service or we don't service? The fact of the matter is governments borrow money from the private sector, from the private banks. We have a Bank of Canada that was founded in the 1930s to provide interest-free loans for infrastructure and all these other services. And it was a Trudeau government in 1974 that brought it under the jurisdiction of the Bank of International Settlements.
Philip,
so that is the, so
we'll have to stop you there. We're on the 30-second time limit with this one. Mariam?
I think it is important for us to deal with the debt. I think it's possible by taxing corporations. We can double the corporate tax. We don't have I think we do, but we need to impose taxes on capital gains by 100%. Also, the Communist Party of Canada wants to cut military spendings by 75%. So there is a bit of the debt. Also, nationalize banks, which would help a lot. Banks have an incredible amount of money that they just sit on.
Okay, Mariam, thank you. Jordan?
Definitely, I think the government should run like a family runs, your credit card, you're spending and spending and spending. People don't really understand, I think, what debt in the government is. It's like having a credit card. I'm using money I don't have, and I'm paying a huge amount of interest on that. Well, over time, it eats away on every part of your society and your family. So no, I think the debt should be paid down.
Okay, thank you very much. Julian?
So in 2014, we balanced the budget. In 2015, we're on track for surplus. Paying down the debt is an important priority. The money spent servicing the debt can be much better spent providing programs to Canadians, and it can only be done once we've paid down the debt. That's why we're committed to running balanced budgets. We've introduced balanced budget legislation, which puts penalties on ministers for cost overruns during times of deficit, and we will continue to support a balanced budget.
Okay.
See, that's a very good point.
One sec. Sorry, Jordan, one sec. Linda.
I don't think that paying down the debt should be a priority, but nor should running up new debt through needless deficits, be what we're doing either. Because there's an alternative. Instead of incurring new debt to fund the programs we need, we should be turning to corporations that have had a huge, huge tax cut over the last 15 years under both Liberal and Conservative governments. There's plenty of revenue there. We're losing tens of billions of dollars a year in money that we could be collecting from corporations. And why go into debt when we could in fact use corporations, corporate income to finance the programs we need?
Okay, Linda and Bill.
Well, I think when we're in a low growth era, and we are, let's just be clear, we're in a low growth era. We've been in recession for the first 2 quarters of the year. We're looking at low growth throughout the rest of this year. We are facing a demographic challenge. We, for the first time, have more 65-year-old and over than we have 14-year-old and under. So in that era, you need to think about how you increase growth. We believe that making productive investments, very different from spending, which I understand, productive investments at a time of low interest rates can be very positive for growth rates in this country. It can be very positive for getting people back to work, and it can improve people's lives at the same time.
Okay, thank you very much, Bill. Jordan, you wanted to...
I think Julian actually hit on a very, very important point, and I think we all can agree on this, and it's nice when we all can agree on something. When ministers are overspending, we read in the paper all the time, this $1 billion here is gone, $2 billion here has disappeared, $5 billion here has disappeared, and nobody's accountable. Well, I think that's a great idea, that they should be held accountable, because when people are elected, they often forget it's not their money, it's our money. And I think we all have to be more responsible and hold them responsible, and I love the fact that Julian actually said that.
Well, that legislation, I'm very proud of it. It's going to be great. However, Justin and the Liberals have promised to repeal it, which I don't think is a good idea.
Okay, well, we're going to go to Philip first, and then Colin and Bill.
As I said, there's a lot of mumbo-jumbo going around about numbers and so forth. One thing is the fact that we want a human-centered society. So the issue around whether we pay the deficit or debt, the first thing is looking after human beings. And in order to do that, we can tell the money lenders to have a moratorium on debt servicing for a couple of years, to have the money to invest in social programs. That's not unreasonable.
Okay, Colin.
Yeah, well, I just find it very ironic that this newfound conversion of the Conservatives for all of a sudden not running deficits, where was that in the last 10 years? Stephen Harper is very ideological about tax cuts. I think maybe he should be a little bit more familiar with compound interest and the effect it has. Every one of those boutique tax cuts is every dollar of that, that's $1 and interest that had to be paid back. I wish they'd been a little bit more concerned about that. And yes, I must admit the deficit and the entire debt that the country has is of great concern to me.
Okay, Bill.
Well, I do think that we do need to look at what the Conservatives have actually done. They, in 2014, aimed to show a surplus by using a number of gimmicks. They sold off shares that we owned nationally. They let spending lapse. They reduced spending in certain areas in order to put something in the windscreen for a federal election. The truth of the matter is that we have been spending in deficit for a while. Our difference is that we want to spend in productive assets that we know will make a difference in people's lives, in things like transit, affordable housing, in dealing with climate change. These are important investments. It's the right time to do it, and with a Liberal government, we'll be making those investments.
Okay. Anybody else? Oh. Okay, I think we're actually going to move on to closing statements now. We're almost out of time. I've just had them talking in my ear, telling me to start wrapping it up here. We're going to go in reverse order, and 30 seconds, and we'll keep it tight to the 30 seconds. And Jordan Stone, the independent, you're first.
Well, I'm the only independent candidate running. I've actually gotten to know a bit about a few of the candidates. I've met Bill a number of times. He's a great person. He's an animal lover. I've met Linda at the church. I know that she has a heart for the homeless and those living in poverty. I've actually hung out with Julian a bit, and here's a person who is actually living like most people in the riding live. I haven't gotten to know the other candidates. Economic equality. That would be my main issue.
I'm going to have to cut you off there, Jordan. I'm sorry, we're just with time here. Mariam Ahmad, the Communist Party of Canada. Mariam.
I just want to say thank you again for tuning in and watching the debate. Just to repeat, my name is Mariam, and I'm running for the Communist Party of Canada in Toronto Centre. I just want to reiterate that the Communist Party of Canada, unlike the 4 major parties, is the only party that cares for the working class people. So when you vote on October 19th, just keep that in mind. And also remember that election is not the only way to get involved. It's in the streets, really.
Okay, Mariam, thank you. Philip Fernandez of the Marxist-Leninist Party.
In this election, not a single vote to the Liberals and the Conservatives. Vote against austerity, vote for democratic renewal. We have a website, mlpc.ca. We invite people to check out our website, sign up for a magazine called Renewal Update, and participate in the discussion. None of the problems that we are facing in the society and which is in crisis is going to be solved by this election by itself. It's a long-term prospect, and we need all the people, including in Toronto Centre, all the people of Canada, the workers, to be involved in solving this problem that we have.
Okay, Philip, thank you. Colin Biggin of the Green Party. Colin?
As I said at the beginning, it's my honor to be the representative for the Green Party in Toronto Centre. It's also, of course, my pleasure to live in the riding and hopefully represent it. I think all the candidates are great here. And if I have one thing to say, I would say, please, on October 19th, get out and vote. It's very important. We've had declining votership going on in every election. Please, get out and vote.
Okay, Colin, thank you. Bill Morneau of the Liberals. Bill?
Well, it's been a real pleasure to be here today. You've heard the arguments, and now you have an important choice to make. Choosing Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party, and me, Bill Morneau, is a vote for real change. A new government that will invest in you. A new government that will invest in making Canada fairer. A new government that will choose to make important long-term investments rather than cuts. I hope I can count on you to vote for Bill Morneau and the Liberal Party on October 19th. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bill. Linda McQuaig of the NDP. Linda?
Thanks for watching. Canadians soon have an opportunity to finally end the Harper years. And the NDP is ready to form a government that will bring in progressive change. We will tax corporations and use the revenue from that to invest in important, vital programs like housing, like childcare, like transit. And we'll do that in order to make this, once again, a more equal and inclusive country. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. And Julian de Battista, the Conservative.
So we've been given a clear choice. Thomas Mulcair's NDP and Justin's Liberals are both promising high taxes. They will kill jobs, and that demonstrates inexperience in managing our economy. The Conservative plan, led by the experienced leadership of Stephen Harper, will lower taxes, create jobs, balance the budget, and ensure that the government services in which we've come to rely on are available for future generations. We need a fresh face for Toronto Centre. We need to choose proven leadership, so choose Julian de Battista. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julian. And the one other candidate who was not here is Tom Armstrong, the Libertarian. But I thank you all for joining us today and taking the time to come out and express your ideas. Thank you. And thank you for joining us for the local campaign. Airtimes for other debates can be found on rogerstv.com. I'm Roger Peterson. Thanks for watching.